Sanctify Soma, our mind, our heart, our intellect, and may thy worshippers delight in thine exhilaration produced by the sacrificial food, for thou art mighty. Like the winds violently shaking the trees, the draughts of Soma have lifted me up, for I have often drunk of the Soma. Both heaven and earth are not equal to one half of me, for I have often drunk of the Soma. I am the sun, the greatest of the great, raised to the firmament, for I have often drunk of the Soma. The identity of the agent Soma is undoubtedly one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the field of religious history. Common in both the religious lore of ancient India and in Persia, where it was known as haoma, the plant was considered a god, and when pressed and made into a drink, the agent worshippers who imbibed it gained the powerful attributes of that god. The origins of Soma's use goes far back into the shadowy time of prehistory, and to the common Aryan ancestors of the Persian Zoroastrian religion and the Vedic religion of India. This common ancestry accounts for the many similarities in the Hindu and Zoroastrian cosmologies and languages, as can be seen in the surviving religious texts, the Hindu Rig Veda and the Persian Avesta, and especially to their use of the sacred plant known in India as Soma and in Persia as haoma. The qualities of Soma are given in poetic detail, and the ancient author's love and admiration for the plant can still be felt thousands of years after the texts were composed. In a spirit similar to that of the Catholic Eucharist, Soma was prepared in a sacred rite and then bestowed upon the pious to give them spiritual inspiration, wisdom, courage, health, and other benefits. As the identity of the original Soma was lost, modern practitioners of these religions are known to use non-entheogenic substitutes, and in some cases the mildly stimulating ephedra when practicing the Soma ritual. But the descriptions and praises of the plant left to us by antiquity have led numerous scholars to speculate on what the botanical identity of the original plant was. Suggestions, to name a few, have included milkweed, Stropharia cubensis, Sarcostomia acidium, mandrake, rhubarb, ginseng, opium, and Syrian root. Most popularly, and more relative to what shall be discussed here, the Amanita muscaria mushroom and cannabis have been suggested. As the editors of the authoritative Encyclopedia Britannica have recorded on the subject, one of the pharmacological mysteries is the nature of Zoroastrian haoma and the early Hindu Soma, both sacred drinks made from plants. Their source may have been the Amanita muscaria mushroom, the mind-affecting chemicals of which pass into the urine, with their properties very little diminished. There are scriptural references to sacred urine drunk as a source of divine insights. Allusions to twigs and branches of haoma, however, suggest other plants, perhaps hemp. The mushroom, which does not grow in the hot countries, may have been introduced to India by Aryan invaders from the north. Subsequently, other plants may have been substituted until their identity was confused and lost. Undoubtedly, the most popular candidate for this long-lost entheogen has been the Amanita muscaria mushroom. The fly agaric theory was originally proposed by the banker and mycologist R. Gordon Wasson and has been widely accepted by a number of scholars. Wasson explained that Hindu references to psychoactive urine occur in the text of the Mahabharata when the god Indra, disguised as an outcast, gives the hero Utanka Amrita ambrosia to drink in the form of piss, and Rig Veda passages translated as drink Soma as much as you wish, pissing it out day by day. Piss the flowing Soma, and purify yourself with this stream which thou, Soma, has made the sun to shine. In the case of the story of Indra and the hero Utanka being given amrita, ambrosia, rather than relating the psychedelic effects of fly agaric-enriched piss, this may indicate that Indra was so holy even his piss was sacred. As well, urine drinking is believed to have a number of beneficial applications in Eastern medicine. The second reference to the drinking and pissing of Soma may have been seen as a symbolic magical gesture aimed at bestowing the Soma plants with the rains which helped it grow and which was believed to have been divinely sent, i.e. when they drank the Soma, Indra drank with them in heaven, and when they passed it back out again, Indra did so as well, resulting in the rains from heaven. A comparable magical relationship, albeit more tasteful, still occurs in India's Jagannath festival, where a priest and priestess ritually imbibe a cannabis preparation before having sex to ensure the monsoon rains. Also questioned by Vedic scholars are the Vedic references that have been interpreted by the Wasan camp as identifying the color of Soma as red. Many translations have red unequivocally excluded and refer to other colors ranging anywhere from golden to yellow and even green. My personal translation of the Rig Veda, which comes from a religious sect with no personal entheogenic interest in the Soma plant, lists the color of Soma as both purple and green. Interestingly, this is the colors of ripe hemp. As well, the beautiful fragrance of Soma is referred to a number of times, hardly something that would be applicable to a mushroom. Wasson and others have noted that descriptions of Soma list no leaves, branches, or roots, and then reason that this identifies a mushroom, but this reasoning is based solely on omission. Detailed descriptions of the plant were likely a form of sacred knowledge, and therefore not privy to the masses who were administered the Soma drink by the priesthood. Or at least this was the argument Wasson himself put forth in relation to the veiled references to Soma which he interprets as identifying the fly agaric. Another point seldom mentioned by those in the mushroom camp is that the mountaintop location for the ancient Soma, identified as the Hindu Kush Mountains, is an area renowned for the quality ganja it has produced for millennia, and the color ranges of the indica plants indigenous to that area fit well within the range of those suggested for the ancient Soma: purple, green, yellow, golden. References to its rich color and wonderful fragrance, the blissful state produced by the Soma, and the quantity and extent to which it was used also limit the number of potential candidates, as some of the botanical suggestions produce effects which could be considered far from blissful, and in some cases, if ingested in the quantities in which Soma was consumed, would have been toxic. Interestingly, before his death in 1986, R. Gordon Wasson, the originator of the fly agaric theory, referred to the fallacy of David Flattery's identification of the Syrian rue as Soma, on the basis that the ingestion of the plant does not lead to a blissful state. In response to this statement, Wasson had it pointed out to him by an interviewer, Robert Forte, that the amanita does not lead to a blissful state either. Wasson, with a slightly dumbfounded explanation, replied, "Well, I know, that troubles me too. I cannot explain it, but there must be some explanation. No white man enjoys a blissful experience that I know of from the amanita. Now, there are occasions." Wasson goes on to weakly describe an occasion where a Japanese associate received a state which, as an outside observer, he perceived as being blissful. Unfortunately, Soma was not recorded amongst the Japanese of the ancient world, so the comparison is somewhat weak. Alternatively, such blissful states have long been attributed to another candidate for the sacred drink, cannabis hemp, which has been acknowledged for the feeling of bliss it instills in its users the world over, and has been celebrated for such in some of humanity's earliest written records. On this particular note, I challenge anybody to produce as much as 1/2 of the literature referring to the blissful state produced by any of the other plant candidates for Soma as I could for hemp, especially in Persian and Indian literature. An impossible task. Indeed, researcher Dr. McClung, discoverer of both THC and the brain's cannabis receptor, dubbed the indigenous molecule that attaches to the receptor, the human body's natural THC, anandamide, from Ananda, the Sanskrit word for bliss. Despite a lifetime of effort, Wasson failed to prove his case for the fly agaric being the Soma, and his prejudices against cannabis, evident in his request that it not be considered an entheogen when the term was being coined, may have been the downfall of his otherwise brilliant career and research into psychoactive plants and the origins of religion. Taking all this into account, it's not surprising to find that a number of researchers dispute the theory that the Amanita muscaria is a Soma, and instead suggest that cannabis was the original identity of the Soma plant. Likely due to cultural prejudice and a lack of knowledge regarding the role of entheogens at the inception of religions, cannabis was originally rejected outright by Western historians researching the identity of the Soma in the 19th century. It was not until 1921 and the publication of Braja Lal Mukherjee's article, The Soma Plant, in the Journal of the Royal Asiatic Society that cannabis or bang was put forth as a serious candidate. Mukherjee based his assertion on references in the Satapatha Brahmana to the plant Usana from which Soma is made. The U in Usana was a prefix carryover from another dialect, and when the U was dropped, you return to one of the original Sanskrit names for cannabis, Sana. As well, Mukherjee notes the use of the term similar to Soma in cannabis names in the language of the Tibetans, Somarastra, and in the Tanguts, Disksoma. Mukherjee, who was of Indian descent, noted the long Hindu history regarding the sanctity of bang, its use in the worship of Shiva, and also in that of his counterpart Durga, where it appears in the Soma sacrifice. Finally, like other researchers, he noted the obvious parallels between ancient descriptions of the preparation of the Soma and the traditional preparation of bang. In 1939, Jojin's Candace Roy developed more on Mukherjee's work, noting that Soma is actually called bang in the Rig Veda 9:61-13. And from ancient descriptions, Soma added an air of hilarity to the sacred feast, and this was typical of bang intoxication. Respected religious scholar Elaine Danilo, who lived from 1907 to 1994, was the first Westerner to be fully initiated into the cult of Shiva, and he at first rejected the hemp Soma theory but came to accept it in 1960 and defended this hypothesis up until his death. As Danilo says, this agent's sacred drink was likely to resemble a drink what today is called bang. Made from the crushed leaves of Indian hemp, every Shaivite has to consume bang at least once a year. The drink, which intensifies perceptivity, induces vision, and above all leads to an extreme mental concentration. It is widely used by yogis. Details concerning its preparation are to be found as early as the Vedic period. The description of the way Soma was prepared and its immediate use without fermentation can only apply to bang, and is identical to the method employed today. Danilo is not alone in his view, and scholars such as A.L. Basham have also noted that Soma was prepared from a plant, was made with great ceremony in the course of the sacrifice, when the herb was pressed between stones, mixed with milk, strained, and drunk on the same day. The effects of Soma are rather like those attributed to such drugs as hashish. Soma may well have been hemp, which grows wild in parts of India, Central Asia, and South Russia, and from which modern Indians produce a narcotic drink called bang. A look at the ancient references themselves do indeed seem reminiscent of the pressing of hemp leaves and flowers and the preparation of the beverage bong. O King Soma, O Soma which the priest carefully prepares, high with power that is real. Its flowing blends together. Together blend the fragrances of the fragrant, purifying you by the formula. O wild God, flow, O elixir for Indra all around. There where the priests, O purified Soma, speaking the language of the poets, is exalted by Soma, holding in his hand the stone, creating ecstasy for himself through Soma, flow, O elixir of Indra, for all people all round. Note the references to the faces of the rocks used for crescent Soma as being turned green in the process, and also the references to Soma as the purple tree in what seems to be a clear description of the color of ripened Cannabis indica. Let these stones speak, ye solid, quick-moving stones. You utter the noise of praise, full of the Soma juice. They roar like 100, like 1,000 men. They cry aloud with green-tinted faces, obtaining the sacrifice, the pious stones partake of the sacrificial food. They speak, they receive into their mouth the sweet Soma juice, chewing the branch of the purple tree. The voracious bowls have bellowed. Splitting but unsplit, you O stones, enjoy the Soma flowing green with Soma. They made heaven and earth resound with their clamor. The stones proclaim it with their clamor at the issue of the Soma juice. Like cultivators sowing the seed, they, devouring the Soma, mix it and do not hurt it. Proclaim the praise of the stones, which has effused the Soma juice. Let the honored stones revolve. Also in favor of the hemp Soma theory are ancient writings which indicate that, like the modern wearing of hemp in jewelry amongst the counterculture, the stalks of hemp were woven together and worn around the neck as an amulet for protection, an act of weaving that would be hard to accomplish with a mushroom, but not with a fibrous cannabis plant. Further Vedic references to Soma's fibrous qualities are pointed to by one of the more vocal proponents of the hemp Soma theory, the knowledgeable editor of High Times, Steve Hager. The restless Soma. You try to grab him, but he breaks away and overpowers everything. He is a sage and inspired by poetry. He covers the naked and heals all who are sick. The blind man sees, the lame man steps forth. A description that certainly does have connotations of medicinal, fibrous, and psychoactive properties. Hager has furthered the cause of the hemp Soma camp by getting the respected Ayurvedic doctor Deepak Chopra to acknowledge that from what we can see of Vedic descriptions, it is possible that Soma was a cannabis-like substance. A little research into the Iranian counterpart of the Soma, the haoma, also offers us some interesting insights. Haoma consumption originated in Persia with the Aryan tribes who brought it with them in their ancient exodus from the Hindu Kush mountains to settle in what is now Iran. Centuries later, they became known as Zoroastrians after their influential prophet, Zoroaster. Zoroastrian mythology has it that their prophet was conceived after a heavenly rain brought forth plants which were consumed by cows belonging to Zoroaster's future parents. The cows gave milk, which was pressed with haoma and drank by the childless couple, who later conceived Zoroaster while making love for the first time. After the time of Zoroaster, the holy plant was often referred to as banga, a term usually associated with cannabis. The Zoroastrian holy book, the Vendidad, the law against demon, calls banga Zoroaster's good narcotic. This ancient reference indicates the plant as the favored entheogen of the Persian prophet, and later Zoroastrian writings refer to Zoroaster's use of banga for shamanic ecstasy and initiation. Zoroaster's wife, Havove, prays for the Supreme Being to give her his good narcotic banga, that she might think according to the law, speak according to the law, and do according to the law. It has long been acknowledged that Zoroastrian writers influenced the Bible in very many important ways. Beliefs and ideas such as heaven and hell, an afterlife, a coming Savior, and even the final apocalypse have their origins in the Iranian faith. Further, these concepts were developed by Zoroastrian initiates who received their power of revelation through consuming powerful drafts of bang. In fact, the only means of receiving religious insights is to achieve the menog existence through drinking powerful bang extracts and powerful bang preparations. In this state, the devotee would go to basically into a drug-induced sleep for a day or more and then come back and relate the revelations of his experience. In the case of Persian references, a number of Orthodox Zoroastrian sources see haoma as very possibly marijuana or hashish. As the Zoroastrian Assembly at www.zoroastrian.org notes, Ali A. Jaffrey, who has been writing on the Zoroastrian religion for over 40 years, states that the mushroom seems to be far-fetched, and the commonly used modern ingredient for the haoma ceremony, ephedra, is void of all the qualities described in the Avestas and the Vedas and is definitely a late substitute. The author, himself a teetotaler, has drunk large glassfuls of haoma juice without feeling any side effects. Ephedra supplies ephedrine, medically used to treat low blood pressure. Ephedrine is a decongestant. It does not put a person high, but it does make one feel hyper. Jaffrey makes an interesting point in references to the Saka tribes of Central Asia, a group more popularly known as the Scythians, and who were referred to in the writings of Herodotus in 440 BC in reference to the use of cannabis to achieve ecstasy. Indeed, numerous cannabis-related artifacts, and even cannabis itself, has been discovered by modern archaeologists at numerous Scythian burial sites. As Joffrey explains of the Scythians and the Soma, the description of the plant, that it was greenish in color, grew on mountains well north of the Indus Valley, and was traded by outsiders, had a special ritual to prepare, was an instant intoxicant prepared from the pounding and extracting of its juices, and that the Saka tribes of eastern Central Asia were called haoma varka, haoma gatherers, by the Achaemenians, all points to my opinion what is now known as Indian hemp, Cannabis sativa. The ceremony resembles the present practice of solemnly pounding and extracting and straining its juice and mixing it with water, milk, poppy seeds, and almonds by the Sufis, fakirs, pirs, sadhus, and other Muslim and Hindu mystics of certain orders and circles in Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, particularly those connected with the shrines and holy places. It still has a halo around it. The drink, an instant psychoactive mixture, is greenish in colors. It is called Duk-e-Vedat, unity milk, by Iranian mystics, and Thadal, cooling refreshing, by Sindhi Sufis. One description says its addicts never die, a far echo of Durashama for Homa. Ali Jaffrey, 2000, after 40 years of study of the Zoroastrian religion. Recent archaeological evidence has emerged from the Russian excavations in the Karakum Desert of Turkmenistan, and this gives the cannabis Soma theory an element of legitimacy that the other candidates cannot top. To quote Professor Serianati, who's involved with the archaeological finds, for the first time in the world of archaeological practice, monumental temples have been found in which intoxicating beverage of the Soma haoma type were prepared for cult ceremonies. The excavation documentally proved that poppy, cannabis, and ephedra were used for making the Soma haoma drinks, and thickets of these plants were found in excess in the vicinity of the excavated temples of Margiana. Soviet archaeologists uncovered a large shrine about the size of a football field dating from 2000 BC and consisting of two parts, one of which was obviously for public, but the other, as anthropologist Richard Rudgley describes, hidden from the gaze of the multitude, an inner sanctum of the priesthood. In one of these private rooms were found 3 ceramic bowls. Analysis of samples found in these vessels by Professor Meyer Melikian revealed the traces of both cannabis and ephedra. Clearly, both these psychoactive substances had been used in conjunction in the making of a hallucinogenic drink. In the adjoining room of the same inner sanctum were found 10 ceramic pot stands, which appear to have been used in conjunction with strainers designed to separate the juices from the twigs, stems, and leaves of the plant. In another room at the other end of the shrine, a basin containing remains of a considerable quantity of cannabis was discovered, as well as a number of pottery stands and strainers that have also been associated with the making of psychoactive beverages. Richard Rudgley, 1998. Remnants from these vessels, recovered at the site and involved in the preparation of the sacred drink, have impressions from cannabis seeds left in the gypsum that settled over the millennia, and the remnants of ephedra, poppy, and mostly cannabis in the white sediment stuck to the sides of the aged pots and pitchers. As Russian archaeologist Victor Sarianidi says, this proves these plants were used for making Soma haoma drinks. Contradicting Sarianidi's analysis of the seed imprints found in a number of the pots used to make the sacred beverage, Professor Backles has suggested that the seed imprints in question are too small to have been cannabis seeds, and instead suggests that millet seeds are what is indicated. Contrarily, as noted by Robert Cornell Clark, cannabis seeds occur in sizes ranging from 2 millimeters to 6 millimeters in length and to 2 millimeters to 4 millimeters in maximum diameter. Here in Figure 1 we can see just how wide the variations of the seeds are. Mature cannabis seeds vary widely in size, shape, color, and seed coat pattern. Colors range from light gray to black and from buff to dark brown. That ancient world seeds were generally of the smaller size is clearly indicated by the seeds collected from the Scythian burial site in Pazyrak, which are in the center of this picture alongside more modern strains of cannabis. Seed variation in its most extreme lengths can be seen in this following picture. Finally, modern cannabis breeders in search of the early flowering strains have bred varieties of indica with its older uncultivated predecessor ruderalis, developing one would consider a strain of cannabis that would be similar to that in question from the sites in Kirakum at Margiana, as cultivation of the plant then was much older to its origin than now. The seeds of this strain of cannabis, popularly known as Mighty Might, are of the smallest and darkest variety to be found, being of a solid color, almost black, and about 2 millimeters in length. Thus it can be seen clearly that Sarianidi's original analysis of the seed imprints at Margiana are well within the range of seed size and shell pattern, or rather lack thereof, for cannabis. This range fits well within those put forth by both archaeological and botanical evidence. Reconstructions of the instruments used in the preparation of the aged drink offer some insights into the ingenuity of these aged stoners. The plant was soaked in water in large tubs and then beaten and pressed into milk, a process directed at releasing the THC-rich trichomes from the plant matter. Then this whole preparation was placed into large pots, which had a hole in the bottom covered with a wool filter, and the final preparation was recovered in the vessel below. A technique similar in some respects to the modern method of making water hash and the filter bags used in that process. But of course, the similarities to that agent preparation of making the cannabis drink bomb are even more profound. The addition of the mildly stimulating plant ephedra in this preparation likely accounts for the reputation of Soma to keep one awake, and was probably done in the same spirit as medieval Sufis who would eat hashish and drink lots of strong coffee, then stay up all night playing religious music. Interestingly, ephedra is itself on the verge of being banned, much like the cannabis that's being used here. Based upon the massive size of the archaeological site with a temple about the size of a football field, the Russians believe that the temple served as a major depot for the entheogenic drink, and that devotees traveled from far and wide to imbibe of it there. If, as the evidence indicates, this site was one of the earliest remnants of the Soma cult, then here with this cannabis cult we find the very ancient roots of many modern existing. A slightly later but related site revealed remains of ephedra, again, but this time in conjunction with the pollen of poppies. As Rudgley explains, the discovery enshrines the remains of opium, cannabis, and ephedra in ritual vessels that are dated between 2000 to 1000 BC shows that Soma, in its Iranian form haoma, may be considered as a composite psychoactive substance comprising of cannabis and ephedra in one instance, and opium and ephedra in another. These tubes here with the eyes on them were used for drinking the opium preparation, the eyes obviously indicating the visionary powers of the ancient drug. This archaeological evidence goes a long way to answering the riddle of the ancient Soma. It accounts for the current use of one of the main candidates, ephedra, as it was part of the original ingredients. As well, the later use of opium poppies indicate other plants may have been used as a substitute for cannabis, and this may in fact be the source of much of the confusion surrounding the issue of what the Soma was. Possibly when the Aryans left their homeland, access to haoma became more difficult, and when the original plant was not available, other herbs were used as substitutes. This is a suggestion of Mircea Eliade, who wrote that whatever plant was used by the Indo-Aryans in the early centuries, it is certain that it was later replaced by other botanical species. If Eliade's suggestion is correct, then eventually these continuing substitutions could have caused so much confusion among the ancient worshippers that over a few generations the original identity of the plant was lost and forgotten, and the name became one that referred to a variety of plant drugs, each becoming Soma through ritual consecration. Indications of this later development may be found in the Atharva Veda, written centuries after the original Vedas, in reference to a variety of plants, including cannabis, being governed by the god Soma. We tell of the 5 kingdoms of herbs, headed by Soma. May it and the kusha grass, and banga and barley, and the herb saha release us from anxiety. Mythology surrounding haoma. It is said to be a foretaste of the white home. The institution of the white home takes place at a cosmological time identical in many respects with the Christian apocalypse, when the final savior, the Sastoshayant, sacrifices the last sacred ox, and from the body of the dying victim were born all herbs and health-giving plants. From its blood the vine, which produces the sacred drink of the mysteries. Interestingly, the Persian creation mythology has it that Ahura Mazda, God, eased the pain of the first created ox with cannabis after it was poisoned by Angurumanu, the devil, who cursed it with death, disease, and other maladies. In later times, the figure of Satyashant merged with the older Persian god Mithra, and a depiction from the Roman period in which the cult's popularity became widespread clearly shows a cannabis leaf pouring forth from the bull's wounds, perhaps indicating that the bull heals the earth and its inhabitants with the same plant that eased its own pain. When this scenario is looked at symbolically, in comparison with our own modern plight, some interesting analogies can be drawn. In the magical tradition, the sword represents the power of the intellect. As well, in modern terms, the sacred cow has come to represent one's religious and philosophical beliefs. Perhaps symbolically, by taking the intellectual study of the entheogens into the realm of the study of the world's religions, we are in a sense plunging the sword of Mithras into the sacred cow. And as we do so, the sacred plants of our ancestors pours forth once again as the Soma of the Rig Veda, the Haoma of the Gathas, the Cannabis of the Tree of Life of the Bible. Either way, ironically, in our own age, we find ourselves having to fight for the right to partake of a plant that can, in fact, offer us many of the qualities of the age of mysterious Soma haoma, and is likely indeed to be that very plant. Just as both the industrial and medicinal establishments have been forced to acknowledge the miraculous qualities of hemp, so too, through study of ancient religious texts concerning the herb and the righteous acts of our many adherents, hopefully, the religious establishment shall come to recognize cannabis for the sacred gift and tree of life and truth.